really fascinated about the growth in non-alcoholic variants of alcoholic drinks in 2022. Forbes magazine published an article about the rise of no-alcohol drinks. That sales of no-alcohol or low-alcohol beverages grew by more than 7% in volume across key global markets. And then in more recently, 2024, from a US market perspective, no alcohol beverages enjoyed a strong year. Overall volumes rising by 29% year on year. I'm joined now by David Williams, former deputy editor of currently Financial Mail deputy editor and former SA Breweries communications manager. So you know a little bit about economics and the beer industry. David, thanks so much for joining us. We have seen generally in global markets the appetite for alcohol diminishing, particularly amongst a younger market. So what comes first, a change in taste for non-alcoholic beverages, or the revenue impact of a declining customer base of alcohol companies, David?
Yeah, morning, Leslie. Yeah, it's an interesting one, the zero alcohol drinks. And, of course, I think those numbers are coming off a very low base. I mean, it sounds huge, a 29% increase, but I don't think it's that big. They've always been around, and I think what's interesting with beer, and of course I'm not a spokesman for SAB anymore, but I remember at the time what we used to talk about was that drinking beer in particular, but also other drinks like wine and whiskey, there's a culture around it. And part of the culture of beer is the foam, because beer is unique in that it has the foam, which is part of the aroma that you get from the beer. And there's a whole sort of culture. It's the look of it, it's the foam, it's the sound of the pouring around the braai fire and so on. And I think a lot of people enjoy all the things around the beer, the cultural things around the beer, the rugby and so on. And if you're standing with a beer in your hand, but it's not alcoholic, it looks as if you've got a beer. So you kind of tick the boxes. But for me, zero alcohol beer is a bit like zero caffeine coffee. I don't see the point. So, obviously what the whole thing is, moderation in these things. I wonder, I think beer has like wine and whiskey, a long culture and tradition. I don't think they're going to go away that quickly. Yeah. I think the low alcohol beers are actually pretty good. They I think got to the point where I can think of a couple of brands which, they nearly are the real thing, but not quite.
Yeah, I'm looking at an article on the Business Day where the Beer Association of South Africa says it actually wants to take advantage of this pivot of many people who want alcohol-free alternatives. The beer industry of South Africa says 1 in every 66 jobs in this country comes from the beer industry. I don't know what the figures are looking like in South Africa and whether we have a declining customer base, but that would impact on South African breweries if that is the case.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of economic explanation too. We used to say that, let's go to the Shebeen on a Friday night and you've got money enough for 3 beers. And in hard times, you might have money enough for 2 beers, which is only 2/3 of what you normally have. However, in good times, you might have 4 beers. So I think if you look at the unemployment rate in South Africa and the general economic situation, I think times are tough and people have to count the money and what they spend it on. So I think, it's not just about people saying, oh, well, I don't want to drink beer anymore or alcohol or wine. We have the non-alcoholic wines too, of course, which I find, it's still really grape juice. It doesn't have the tang that alcoholic wine does. So I think it's premature to say that, alcoholic drinks are declining. I think in many ways we drink too much in South Africa. Completely. There's a lot of alcohol abuse. And SA Breweries was under pressure because, the allegation was that you have a social role too. You must stop people, abusing alcohol, which SAB certainly tried to do.
You're not a public health expert, but some are asking, would alcohol-free beverages be some sort of gateway? And I don't think you start at the alcohol-free and then move to an alcoholic beverage. I think it's largely marketed at people who are already consumers of alcohol, who maybe want to decrease their consumption, but still be, how should I say, socially active amongst a group of people who may be consuming in your company, David.
Yeah, that's certainly true. As I mentioned right at the beginning, there's a whole culture around it, and if you're standing at the braai fire with a beer in hand, and it looks like it's non-alcoholic, but it looks like an ordinary beer, that's significant. But I think the other thing that I've noticed in Johannesburg is that compared to a few years ago, there's much more stopping on the road and testing for drunken driving, for alcohol use. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, there was a time when you could have a few drinks and you wouldn't be stopped. You could expect not to be stopped on the road. I don't know what it's like in Cape Town. Certainly they've stepped up the enforcement of that here, particularly in certain areas on Friday and Saturday nights. You're almost certainly going to be stopped in certain places. And, you need one, maybe two drinks and you're over the limit. So I think there are a lot of people who may actually mix. They might have an alcoholic drink and then switch to low alcohol or zero alcohol in order to meet that limit. Yeah. So there are a lot of factors.
And still be socially participatory in an evening. David Williams, really appreciate your time. Deputy Editor at the Financial Mail, former comms manager at SA Breweries, so he knows a little bit about the economics and also about the business of brewing.